Hell, Noel had no qualms about paying for quality camouflage out of his own pocket, but his handler was a stickler for protocol. On the job, the business pays for everything. He could almost hear Big Joe reciting, the guy's personal mantra, because someone had to keep a record of events best kept unrecorded. Yeah, it still made no sense. He whistled to himself as he continued down the stairs, his hotel staff uniform as clean as it had been before the job. Once in the basement, he ducked into a closet to change back into his regular clothes. He tucked the uniform into a suit bag, then left as unobtrusively as he'd arrived. 72 hours later, standing in an alley in Seattle, Washington, Noel stared in confusion at the dead guy on the ground who'd tried to stab him with a needle seconds earlier. The needle intended for Noel stuck out of his assailant's neck. He punched in a familiar number on his phone. Big Joe answered right away. "What's up?" "I think someone tried to kill me." "You think?" A low chuckle. "Someone's always trying to kill you. And?" "And I'm stateside, in Seattle. In public." Well, technically in public, though he stood in a darkened alleyway near the market, since it was just past 7, and at this point in September the sun set earlier, he didn't overly worry about onlookers. But this made no sense. Why come after him in the States when his death overseas would be a minor blip on anyone's radar? For that matter, who would come after him in the city? The job in Bangkok had gone off without a hitch, his cover uncompromised, and as far as he knew, no one held a grudge against him, because no one but Big Joe and a handful of others knew about the work he did. Noel was slick and silent. They didn't call him Ice for nothing. "So you almost got mugged. So what?" "It wasn't a typical mugging." Noel frowned. "No guns or knives. The guy tried to take me out with a hypodermic needle." "A needle? Was the guy on medication? Or maybe some drugged-out wacko out to score?" "No, he was fully cognizant. He looks like a meth head. A little too much. I'd swear this guy was playing a part, not the real thing." Big Joe sounded interested, finally. "Shoot me his photo and prints, and I'll do some digging." Noel took the dead guy's forefinger and thumb and rolled them over his phone, then sent the electronic prints along with a photo. "Be good, boy." Big Joe's trademark sign-off as he disconnected. Noel didn't want to be overly alarmed because his assailant looked like a tweaker and smelled the part. Nevertheless, he had a feeling this was no ordinary robbery, no drug addict shakedown gone bad. The assault had been sloppy, but the perp looked way too kempt under the grime covering his body, and the method screamed professional. Besides, what druggie would waste his own drugs in an effort to score more? Tired, annoyed, and now frustrated that he'd ruined his own homecoming, Noel tidied up the crime scene before leaving. He did his meditation on the go as he headed for the ferry. While keeping one part of himself always on the alert, he let the rest of his mind drift into that calm, kill-free state, knowing he headed home. The one place on Earth that made him feel human. An hour and a half later, his head throbbing, Noel stood in Bainbridge Island, Washington, on the front porch of his craftsman-style home in the thick of the woods, away from people. Well, most people. He stared at the mess on his doorstep, or rather at the mess in the arms of the most annoying woman on the planet.
"I can't believe she'd just drop him off like that."
Adeline Rose blinked her bright green eyes at him and shrugged a strand of blue-black hair off her shoulder. She shifted the bundle in her arms, letting the whimpering baby settle over her generous breasts. A wave of disappointment crushed him, though he shouldn't have cared that his neighbor had apparently given birth since the last time he'd seen her. She hadn't looked pregnant 4 months ago, but he'd been in a rush to get to the Sudan for an assignment. So who knew? Adeline blinked at him, her plump lips parting in question. As usual, the sight of his neighbor dumped his thoughts straight into the gutter. She had a half-Japanese father who'd given her a lean build, porcelain skin, and a slight slant to her eyes.